Hey, Cookies here. This is the Dragonflight Season 1 Mythic Plus guide for Discipline Priest. To preface, YouTube videos have a tendency to become outdated rather quickly, so use this as an overview, but be sure to take a look at up-to-date resources such as subcreation.net or the Icy Veins or Wowhead articles, which I'll have links to in the description down below. It will do a good job of keeping up to date on lots of information, as we as players don't know for sure yet what trinkets to use and what specific talent builds people are going to be running in various key levels as the season adapts and new things change and all that kind of stuff. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for my Healing Out Loud series, where I talk more in depth about specific talent builds, and I do live commentary about them in various types of content like Raid and Mythic Plus. Alright, with that, let's move on to the talents. So I'm not going to talk about the entire talent build, as things have already been changing constantly almost every week for Discipline Priest, as far as what people are deciding to use. So again, use those Wowhead guides, those Icy Veins articles, and Subcreation to keep up to date on what people are using. But instead, what I'm going to talk about is just the mandatory talents you're going to want to take and why we take them. So in the spec-specific tree, so the discipline side of the tree, the mandatory talents, or the ones that are always going to be good, is going to be Lenience and Rapture. Then in the class-specific side of the tree, we have Power Word, Life, and Twist of Fate. And if you've seen any of my other healing guides so far for Mythic Plus, you know that I've talked about a lot more talents than I have with Discipline Priest just now. I only named 4, and that's because, like I said, things are changing a lot, and Discipline Priest is very versatile in the talents that you can take. There's a lot of good talent options and a lot of different builds that people are messing around with right now. So those are the talents that you can really build around, and then outside of that, you can mess around with the tree and kind of figure it out for yourself, or just kind of wait around until people figure it out. But for now, it seems like people are leaning towards the Shadow Covenant side of the tree, and then Power Word, Life, and Mind Games, and the class side of the tree isn't as important, but Shadow Covenant seems to be the biggest playstyle that's happening right now. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and talk about our stats. So for stats, you just want item level. That's the most important thing. And then after item level, once you start comparing the same item level pieces, you're pretty much going to want as much haste as possible, especially this early on in an expansion. We're never going to have enough haste, so just always get haste on everything. And then after that, you can get crit or versatility. It doesn't really matter. They have a similar benefit. And then mastery. The problem with mastery in Mythic Plus is that it doesn't increase our damage, and it only increases our healing about the same as crit or versatility. So it's like we're just missing out on that damage portion. So haste, crit, and verse is what you're going to want on pretty much every piece of gear. But again, item level is the most important. So even if you have mastery on a piece of a gear that's higher item level, just take that. All right, then we have our healing rotation. So our healing rotation, compared to what I talked about in like the beginner's guide, for instance, or what I'm going to talk about in the raid guide that's coming out, it's a lot different in Mythic Plus because we're not reliant on ramps and all this stuff. So all of the complex strategies that come from playing a Discipline Priest, they don't really exist in Mythic Plus. It's still a pretty hard class to play because you have to be proactive and you have to stay ahead of the damage curves that are happening, but it's just not in the same way as it is with raiding. So the healing rotation is really, really simple in Mythic Plus. It's just about understanding what damage is coming and staying on top of that and staying ahead of it and being proactive with our abilities. So first off, we want to be pressing Power Word Shield as much as possible. This is going to be one of our most efficient spells, so every time it's available, we want to be pressing it on somebody. Then after we press Power Word Shield, we're going to be using Flash Heal to apply atonements to single target players taking damage, so like the tank, but usually we can just keep using Power Word Shield to apply atonement to the tank. And then also Power Word Radiance, which is going to be how we apply atonement to everybody in the group. So if there's multiple players taking damage, you're going to press Power Word Radiance. If there's only a single players taking damage, you can press Flash Heal. You can also use Flash Heal as kind of like a small pick-me-up, so keep in mind with that, but just know that when you do Flash Heal somebody, they are going to have atonement for the next 14 seconds, so it's just something to keep in mind, that sometimes maybe just throwing like a penance out on somebody is better than throwing a Flash Heal and having them sit with an atonement for a while when they don't actually need the atonement. Alright, so we've pressed Power Word Shield, we're keeping that on cooldown. We're then either pressing Flash Heal or Power Word Radiance to heal either single target or AoE damage. And then lastly, if we need even more juice in our healing, we then press Shadow Covenant if it's talented, or we press things like Rapture. So those are like our cooldowns. So Rapture, Shadow Covenant, Shadow Fiend. I would call those our main cooldowns. And then that's pretty much it. So then moving into our damage rotation. Our damage rotation in Mythic Plus, again, is not as complex as Raid, and it also doesn't need to be as specific. But if you're trying to get as much damage out as possible in the shortest amount of time, which also results in the most amount of healing in the shortest amount of time when we have Atonements out. So say we just pressed a Radiance and now we want to try to do as much healing as we can. We're going to press Schism, Penance, Mind Blast, and then we spam Smite. That's the basics of it. We also have things like Mind Games and Purge the Wicked. I usually always keep Purge the Wicked on the mob before I start doing that in the first place. But that's the idea of it. And the reason that we do that is because if we have Twilight Equilibrium talented, we just want to make sure that we're alternating between Shadow and Holy spells, which is accomplished by pressing Schism, Penance, Mind Blast, and then Smite. So that's the damage rotation. That's really it. And then if you aren't trying to do as much healing as you possibly can, it's really just press Smite, press Mind Blast if you have mana for it, and press Penance on cooldown. And that can all be incorporated into our healing rotation with the more important things. It's just like, as you're, you just go through the ropes. So you just go like, Power Word Shield on the tank. We're healing. We're pressing Smite. Okay, I'm going to press Penance because it's available. I'm going to press Mind Blast. Oh, the whole group needs healing. Radiance. Okay, now we press Smite a few more times. Now we press Schism, Penance, Mind Blast. And we just kind of alternate between our spells like that. It doesn't have to be super specific, but that's the idea. Is you're just choosing how much healing do I need, and then how much damage do I need, or what damage buttons are available, and I'm just going to press those. All right, and then we're going to talk about some spell usage. So Shadow Fiend and Rapture are our primary healing cooldowns, so we should be planning to use one of these at least in every dangerous pull or boss encounter. So Shadow Fiend and Rapture, which means we can alternate between those two spells pretty much it would be like every minute and a half we have Rapture, so every minute or so we can pretty much press one of them. And then also don't think too hard about Twilight Equilibrium. That's that talent that we were talking about where when we alternate different spell types, it increases our damage done. Really don't think about it too hard. Just find patterns that allow you to alternate from Holy to Shadow spells so you don't have to actively think about it. So that damage rotation that I gave for an example, just getting used to always going Schism, Penance, Mind Blast, and Smite, that's going to help you just not have to think about it. So that's just your normal rotation is, okay, I'm going to press Penance first, then Mind Blast, then Smite, so on and so forth. Next up, Shadow Covenant. If it's talented, it really does not change our gameplay very much, except a few interactions with Twilight Equilibrium, because it does change a couple spell types. Like it changes Divine Star into a shadow spell. Also, if we have Twilight Corruption talented instead, it turns Penance into a shadow spell. So just be aware of that. But again, do not overthink Shadow Covenant. You just press it, and now it causes you to do more healing for the next few seconds. And then lastly, don't hesitate to press buttons as a Discipline Priest. Like I mentioned, the difficulty in playing Discipline Priest in Mythic Plus is just being proactive and not falling behind. As soon as you fall behind, that's when you're going to start struggling on this class. So staying ahead is the most important thing. So don't hold on to your buttons, just use them. If there's even a thought of needing something, just press it. This is especially important when pressing buttons like Power Word Radiance. There's 2 charges on it and it regenerates super fast. So don't hesitate to just use it. If you see 2 or 3 people that have taken damage in your group, just press Radiance. Don't press Flash Heal on each of them to heal them up. Just press a Radiance and do damage. Same thing with things like Rapture. It's such a short cooldown. You can almost use this in like every single pull. So use Rapture. And same thing with Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend's a longer cooldown, but again, you can just alternate it with using Rapture. So you always have something available. Cool. I think that pretty much covers everything for Discipline Priest as far as I know. Again, keep an eye out on the channel for the Healing Out Loud videos. That's where I'll go more in depth, talk specifically about talent builds. We'll probably start with something like Shadow Covenant or Twilight Equilibrium. and just go through and talk about these things, how to use them, my thought process on them. We'll also do some more specific rating guides coming out for like ramping and stuff, since that's the more complex topic with Discipline Priest. But yeah, keep an eye out on all that stuff. I hope you're enjoying Dragonflight. I know I am. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you all in the next one.